What's up, everyone? Welcome back into the channel. Today, we continue the series of going over free agent targets for the Green Bay Packers for this 2025 offseason. So far, we've already went over free agents at positions of need for the Green Bay Packers, such as cornerback, inside linebacker, edge, and we even took a look at some wide receivers. You can go find all those videos on my channel. They're in a separate playlist, so if you want to watch them and look at the free agent targets for the Packers at those positions, again, you can find them all over on my channel. Today, we're going to be looking at another important position of need for the Green Bay Packers, and that is interior defensive line. As I think we can all agree, the Packers need to bolster their front four. And that includes interior defensive line, of course. They have a couple guys in that room that I think have great potential, but they also had Kenny Clark, who struggled in 2024, only had 1 sack on the entire season. Now, heading into this draft class, this is probably the most loaded defensive line draft class I've seen or anyone has seen in a very, very long time. So the Packers should definitely address defensive line in this draft. They could even do it in the first round or the second round or get 2 guys in this class, but that doesn't mean they still can't go out and get a veteran defensive lineman to add to that room. The Packers also have one impending free agent on this defensive line. That is TJ Slaton, more of a zero-tech defensive lineman that helps defend against the run, where the Packers were a lot better in 2024 against the run, so they also might need to replace his production. So now back into the video. First, I wanted to bring up the screen and quickly go over the Packers' current defensive line room. So, and this also includes TJ Slaton, who's an impending free agent, who they could very well bring back. I just feel like they could upgrade in free agency or even the draft. And with how loaded this defensive lineman class is, this draft, I just feel like they don't necessarily need to bring back TJ Slaton. And we could see he's also the lowest graded player in terms of this defensive line class. Now, I think he played better than this. Again, PFF grades, take them as you will. But I think he did play better than a 43.0. I think he was solid against the run. Now, he did struggle in other ways, but I think TJ Slaton wasn't this bad. Now at the top, our top graded defensive lineman was Devontae Wyatt, which I would agree with. You know, he suffered some injuries during this season, and I still have very, very high hopes for Devontae Wyatt moving forward, especially in 2025. I think he will take that next step, and he will be our best defensive lineman this upcoming year. He still only had a 66.4 grade. Karl Brooks, a 61.7, pretty inconsistent there. Not a good run defense grade. None of these guys have great run defense grades, although the Packers did pretty well against the run. Kenny Clark, we can all agree, was a down season. Played in 725 snaps, had a exactly average grade of 60.0. Pass rush, 62.7, below average run grade, 58.4. Colby Wooden hasn't been too much of a contributor. I feel like the Packers very well could end up cutting Colby Wooden if they add, say, 2 to 3 guys into this room, make him expendable. I liked the pick a couple of years ago, the 4th round out of Auburn, but I think Karl Brooks has taken over that rotational role. Colby Wooden, a 50.0. Nesta Jade Silvera is a guy they signed to a futures contract, so he doesn't really equate into any of this. And just to quickly look at like pass rushing stats for these guys and sort them by sacks, Devontae Wyatt only played in 257 passing snaps, which is a lot less than Kenny Clark, yet had 5 times the amount of sacks. Devontae Wyatt had 5 sacks on 32 pressures. Karl Brooks was number 2 in this group, 4 sacks, 28 pressures. Colby Wooden did have 2 sacks, so even Colby Wooden had more sacks than Kenny Clark, 8 pressures though. Kenny Clark did lead the group in pressures, 34 pressures, 1 sack, which seems to be the Kenny Clark kind of way. He gets a lot of pressure sometimes or instantly into the backfield, but then misses the quarterback or misses the running back. Like he's there, but doesn't complete the play. That's what I feel like happens a lot with Kenny Clark. And then TJ Slaton had 14 pressures and 1 sack. So overall, I think the Packers could definitely upgrade through free agency, through the draft. So let's dive into the targets. Now, I do have 5 targets. Firstly, I wanted to quickly talk about Milton Williams, and he's not one of my 5. I just wanted to talk about him real quick because I know there'll be people in the comments saying Milton Williams, Milton Williams, Milton Williams, where I just think he's going to be too expensive. He kind of priced himself out of where I see the Packers spending due to the Eagles defense, how great it was. And that's another thing. The Eagles defense was phenomenal, right? So you have so much talent around you. Not saying Milton Williams isn't a good ball player, but you have so much talent around you, and it elevates your play as well. 6'3", 290 pounds, still 25 years old. I feel like I have a better projection in my mind. I think there's a better projection for Devontae Wyatt than there is Milton Williams. Call me crazy, but I think there is. Milton Williams just had a better 2024. Now he's going to cash in on it. He had a great pass rush grade, 90.4, second overall, but his run defense was putrid, 43.1. He had 40 pressures and 6 sacks, which isn't that far off from what Devontae Wyatt had in less snaps and 50 less snaps. So just to put that into comparison there. The reason why I think he's not going to be on the Packers' radar, and I left him off this list even though we're talking about him, is the average annual calculated market value for Milton Williams is $12 million average annually. I just think that's way too much for Milton Williams. So he's not on this list in terms of guys that I think are plausible for the Packers. All right, so let's get into the first name I have on this list. And the first two are actually going to be teammates that are both impending free agents for the LA Chargers. First on this list is Poona Ford of the Los Angeles Chargers, a shorter defensive lineman at 5'11", but this guy has played some good ball the past couple of years. 310 pounds, still 29 years old. You could see he was the 5th highest graded defensive lineman in 2024 with an 85.1, which includes more of a run defense grade. So if you lose TJ Slaton, you want to get a guy in there that's good against the run, right? More of a zero tech guy. Poona Ford is a great option and surprisingly isn't estimated to get paid that much. He had 22 solo tackles, 3 sacks, 15 assists. Now that's in 358 pass rushing snaps, so more than Devontae Wyatt played as well, and he had 23 pressures. So not the craziest pass rushing candidate in terms of a defensive lineman. Like I said, more of that gap filling, middle of the line type of guy that can help against the run, but did an excellent job at it with LA this past season. And it was definitely a step up from his typical play, years in the past. So definitely rose his play here in 2024 and should cash out a decent bit on the free agency market. His calculated market values at $6.6 million average. So a 29-year-old defensive lineman, maybe you sign him to a 3-year, $19 million contract. You get him in here. He's a veteran, a guy that can really help against the run, which again, the Packers did a lot better in 2024. But if they lose TJ Slaton, they're going to need to replace that snap share. And I think Poona Ford's a solid option. Now, another option from LA is Teair Tart, 27-year-old defensive lineman, 6'2", 304 pounds. If you want to go even cheaper, and a guy that didn't play as many snaps as Poona Ford on that defense, but you just want to add a rotational guy that's, overall good against the run, not a bad pass rusher, overall at a 76 grade in 2024, pass rush grade 75.6, run defense grade 69.7. And I believe every single person on this list today has a better overall grade than all our defensive linemen in 2024, just to put that into perspective. He had 20 solo tackles, 6 assists, he had a forced fumble, 14 stops, he had 1 sack, 11 hurries, 4 hits, 16 total pressures, and that's in only 203 pass rushing stats. Looking at his calculated market value, less than Poona Ford. So if you want to, spend less money to get a rotational guy in there after potentially losing TJ Slaton, or simply just getting another guy in that building to maybe upgrade Colby Wooden, $5.1 million average annual salary, which I think is very, very affordable. This is a guy you could probably sign to a 2-year, $10 to $11 million deal, and it's a solid option down on the defensive line. Next on this list is someone that maybe if you're looking for more of a pass rush prowess defensive lineman, that's Levi Onwuzurike, most recently with the Detroit Lions, 6'3", 290 pounds, still 26 years old. Had a nice solid overall grade of 69.4 in 2024, pass rush grade 67.1, run defense grade 64.1, but I think played a little bit better than these grades. Played in 418 pass rush snaps, so definitely a starter quality guy. Had 21 solo tackles, a forced fumble, 18 stops. He had 3 sacks and 45 total pressures, so he would actually lead the entire Packers defensive lineman room in pressures if we just added him and say, oh, he played for the Packers in 2024. Like, he had more pressures than Devontae Wyatt, than Kenny Clark, and Carl Brooks. So if you want a guy that you want to add into this room that's good against the pass, but not too bad against the run either, I think Levi Onwuzurike is a very underrated option. When you look at his calculated market value, it's even cheaper than Poona Ford and Teair Tart, which is a little crazy to me because he's still 26 years old. And I think he has some decent amount of potential. $4.5 million average annual salary. One thing I'm noticing with this defensive lineman free agency class is there's some solid players, but their values are pretty low. And I think that's because the upcoming defensive lineman draft class, a lot of teams are going to say, hey, well, I'll just draft a couple guys, which the Packers should still do. No doubt about it. But if they want to add a guy for cheap into this room, Levi Onwuzurike, a guy that can get after the quarterback as well, is a solid option. Now, another option just to completely replace TJ Slaton with an upgrade is someone that I really, really like, and that's Sebastian Joseph Day, most recently with the Tennessee Titans. 29-year-old defensive lineman, 6'4", 310 pounds, had a really solid 2024 campaign, especially against the run. Not much of a pass rusher, but very, very good against the run. 70.3 overall grade. Pass rush grade, we can see there pretty low, 52.3. Run defense grade, 77.9. He had 30 total tackles, including 29 stops in 2024, which means, you're either stopping the offense at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage, basically not allowing them to gain anything. He had 29 of those in 2024, which is extremely high. He also had 3 sacks, so he can get after the quarterback. 3 sacks is triple the amount that Kenny Clark had, so, that's something to look at. 10 hurries, 3 hits, 16 total pressures. Getting 3 sacks on 16 pressures is actually pretty impressive. And he didn't play that many pass rush snaps, 222. So more of an early down, gap filling defensive lineman that, I think would be a really big upgrade from TJ Slaton, and someone you just throw down in the middle of that defensive line on early downs, stop the run, which he did a really good job at in 2024. And his calculated market value, $4.5 million. So you're starting to see the trend. A lot of these guys, you could spend $4, $5, $6 million, half the price of what Milton Williams is calculated to get, and probably get similar production, if I'm being honest, in terms of the type of lineman you're adding. Obviously Milton Williams more of a pass rusher than a run stuffer, of course. But there's a couple guys on this list that are pass rushers that you could get for half the price, and you still have Devontae Wyatt. So it's kind of, why get Milton Williams if you already kind of have your guy like that in Devontae Wyatt. Sebastian Joseph Day, very, very solid run defender for a cheap value there, still 29 years old. The final player on this list is another very solid run defender, and that's kind of the trend I went. I added a couple pass rushers, but I also wanted to add mainly run defenders because that's probably what the Packers will need to replace through free agency if they decide to. And the next one is BJ Hill, or the final one is BJ Hill, most recently with the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, still 29 years old. There's a lot of guys in this free agency class right around this mark. 6'3", 311 pounds, and again, had a solid 2024 campaign. 70.2 overall grade, pass rush grade 64.2, run defense grade 69.2, had 39 solo tackles, 14 assists, and just like Sebastian Joseph Day, an absurd amount of stops. He had 29 stops, which is 13th most of all defensive linemen in the NFL. And he also had 3 sacks, just like Sebastian Joseph Day. And now he played a lot more snaps. He played in 710 snaps. So that also puts in perspective of how good Sebastian Joseph Day was, playing in, I think, like half or maybe more than half the snaps, right? But BJ Hill, also a solid option. I just think will command a little bit more money because the amount of snaps he played. A lot of people see him as a full-time starter, which I think a lot of these guys can be. He had 32 total pressures, so a lot more pressures than Sebastian Joseph Day, and 3 sacks. So an all-around great option, BJ Hill, a guy that can play a lot of snaps for you, can get after the quarterback, can help stop the run on early downs, and he'll command a heftier price because of that. His calculated market value is $9 million. So he's kind of that in-between mark. All the guys I showed you and Milton Williams, he's that in-between. If you want to get a full-time starter, a guy that's been doing it starting for a long time, BJ Hill is definitely an option. Been in the league for 7 years, 29 years old, will be 30 by the time the league starts. Maybe you sign him to a 2-year, $18 million deal, and that would put him as the 26th highest paid defensive tackle, which wouldn't be, much money at all. You kind of compare him to other people like Justin Jones, Roy Robertson Harris, maybe even a Sheldon Rankins down there. Definitely a solid option. So those are the 5 interior defensive linemen free agents that are plausible for the Green Bay Packers this upcoming free agency. Let me know down in the comments which one you would want the Green Bay Packers to sign. And again, I fully want the Packers to go and draft probably 2 defensive linemen in this class. I think they should let TJ Slaton walk. They should build on what they have with Devontae Wyatt. Kenny Clark, in my opinion, it would be a make or break season. Like if he has another down year, you probably just cut ties with him after this next season and you build for the future through the draft with a guy like Derek Harmon early on, a guy like CJ West in the middle rounds, and you go and sign someone like Sebastian Joseph Day and just load up this defensive lineman room. I'm all for it. So let me know down in the comments which one you'd want the most, or if there's another free agent, because there actually are a decent amount of defensive lineman free agents that I maybe didn't include on this list. Let me know down in the comments below. But I really appreciate you guys coming by to the channel. Thank you guys always for all the support. Tons of content on this channel throughout the offseason for the free agency, mainly the draft and all of that. So if that does interest you and you just happen to stumble upon this channel and you want to stay in the loop with everything Green Bay Packers, this is the best spot to do so. So go down and click subscribe. I really appreciate you guys coming by. Reminder to go check out BetUS and use code YouTube150 at sign up. I'll catch you on the next one. And as always, go Pack Go.